Well, hello and hello again. It's Phil Croshaw here from the Journey Podcast Live. It's been a while since I've been live. We've been very busy recently, and of course, you get distracted. But I've been wanting to do a live for quite some time, and I've been wanting to get this lady on for quite some time. So we've kept talking to each other and persisting, and eventually we're here and we're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So I'm going to start off just by asking Tracy Heatley to introduce herself and tell us what she's about and what she does. And then we'll do what we always do on the Journey Podcast Live, and we'll just have a nice little chat about all things marketing, business, networking, strategy, anything that pops up. So a very warm welcome to the Journey Podcast Live, Tracy. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. It's nice to finally be here. Like
It is. It is.
My name's Tracy Heatley. I run two businesses, Business Over Breakfast Northwest, and my other company is called Tracy Heatley Limited, but I trade as Be Better with Tracy Heatley, essentially helping businesses to be better at marketing and networking. So networking and marketing, that's my thing. And strategy.
Fabulous.
That's my bag.
Fabulous. And of course, massive areas, to say the least. And it's like, where do you start? So I'm going to start and thinking about it just before we came live, because as people who watch this show from time to time will know, we don't kind of have lengthy conversations in advance. We just go with the flow. Jeopardy is our middle name. So we've not had a pre-chat all the way. Obviously, I know a bit about what you do. So let's start off then with marketing. Mm-hmm. Very easy to say, not so easy to do. And what strikes me, Tracy, is that it's ever evolving and seems to be getting quicker and faster all the time. So just let's start off by give me your thoughts on how perhaps you think and have seen or observed the way that marketing's changed in the last 5 or 10 years since you started to get more and more involved in providing the support in that arena. How's it changed, if it's changed at all?
Yeah, it's changed massively, I think, in the delivery. So I've actually been in business for 20 years next month. It's 20 years since I started working for myself on a self-employed basis to start off with. So essentially, the fundamentals of marketing in terms of strategy have not changed. Everything that a business needs to do before they go to market, say with a product or service, has not changed. What has changed is people's desire to kind of skip by that bit and just go to market. So I think historically, there wasn't as many marketing channels available as there are now. Those channels weren't as easy to access. For example, there was some forms of marketing that would only be accessible by larger businesses with a massive budget that could reach their target audience much quicker than perhaps a smaller business, and that's not the case now. So with social media and the ever-evolving technical age that we live in, everything's much more fast-paced. But then there's so many more messages out there now that, you know, it used to be the fundamentals were, it was 7 times, wasn't it? Historically, you had to reach your audience 7 times on average before the message would kind of hit home and they would take action. But there's so many different platforms and so much information out there now, and so many more people and businesses trying to get the message across. We're just bombarded with stuff, aren't we, from all directions? So
it's just very bloody noisy, isn't it?
It is noisy. And so how do you get your message heard? Yeah. But if people skip by building the foundations and getting their strategy in place and getting their ducks in a row, so to speak, then that's all that's going to have. They're going to get lost in the noise because they're not saying the right things to the right people in the right places at the right time, which is fundamentally what you need to do. You need to know your customers and be targeting them and be specific about who you're directing your marketing at. But I think a lot of businesses just tend to go, right, this is what we've got, bump. And so a lot of what I do is the strategy-based stuff, and that's not changed. You know, those building blocks and the processes that you go through have not changed. How we do it has changed. The amount of information that's available has changed. And also you need professionals to critically analyze that information in the right way. I think before you take your product to market, preferably, there's lots of businesses, I think, going to market too soon. And when I say going to market, I mean starting all the promotional activities before they actually have defined properly what it is they should be going to market with and how they should be doing it, and then wasting money. I keep meeting people that are saying, "Oh, I wish I'd have met you 6 months ago before I wasted X amount of £1,000." And it makes me really sad, because as marketing professionals, we know that those fundamentals have not changed. Does that make
Why do you
sense to
it
you? Do you know what I mean?
100% makes sense to me, because it's almost like you're I have the same conversations regularly as a business consultant and coach. I have the same conversations. What do you think are the key drivers here? Is it because they've started a business and they've got that maybe a certain entrepreneurial tendency, and therefore they want to be pushing it a lot faster and want to be doing the technical thing that they know about and understand? They want to grow it quickly. Maybe they've got the mortgage to pay and they've given up a day job. What do you think drives it? Or is it just impatience and lack of attention, focus and attention that we now have? What are your thoughts on that?
Maybe a little bit of all of the
Mm,
above. So starting with the last one that you said about impatience, I guess we are, as a human race, we're probably more impatient than ever before. We don't save up for things. We get everything on credit.
yeah.
We don't. We've got access to the internet, which wasn't available when I first started in business for everybody. I don't want to sound like an old role model, shall we say, but relic. But everything just happens quickly, and therefore we expect things quicker and quicker. If I try and load something online and it's not there within a second, I'm like, what's going on? We've almost become conditioned that way. Also, I think through channels like social media, and there's influencers perhaps out there saying this is how you need to market your product. Like there's a carte blanche effective way for every business to do that, when there isn't. Every single business is different.
Do you think there's enough? Do you think people spend enough time on understanding the differences between each platform and its relevance, and even the type of content that might work best on each platform? I'm thinking obviously LinkedIn versus, because a lot of businesses now are freaking out that they've got to go dancing on TikTok, for example. Is that
Yeah.
something you see?
Yeah, I'm not. I know my last podcast episode was about threads, and people are rolling their eyes, and not another one,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
social media is a great platform to reach your target
Sorry,
audience if you're doing
I
it
couldn't hear
right. That's my watch saying, "Sorry, I can't understand you."
Well, that's the great thing. We're live, you see. That's what I said. It's jeopardy. It's jeopardy.
Sorry, I
It's
don't
like This
understand that.
Morning on steroids. Crack on. Carry on.
So I think social media makes it easier, but it's so time consuming as business owners. So what you tend to find a lot of the time is that individuals and they're posting the same things on different platforms with the same messages, and I think sometimes they're forgetting that the same people are going to see it, or not adapting it because of lack of time perhaps, or maybe not understanding the platforms. In the hanging outs, a lot of businesses are hanging out in the wrong places, not necessarily where their target market are. So there's a lot of that going on, and to a certain extent it's all trial and error, isn't it? But then the other thing that's not happening is things are not getting monitored, and this I find is really important, because I used to know marketing professionals that worked at a very high level in some very well known larger businesses. They get a massive marketing budget. If they don't spend that budget, they don't get the same budget next year. So they're going to spend it, but
Mm.
not necessarily monitoring the effectiveness of it. Now, it's easy to do that with digital marketing stuff and analytics and all that now, but all types of marketing, above the line, below the line, whatever it is, needs to be monitored. So for the larger organizations, I can never understand why they didn't do that. But it was because the marketing directors and marketing managers perhaps wouldn't get that budget if it wasn't allocated. So as long as overall that particular product, brand, or organization was making money, overall the marketing strategy is working, therefore it matters less. But for smaller businesses, you haven't got that luxury, and it needs to be monitored, and a lot of the time it's not being. So for me, I think that needs to be part of the strategy.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, and this is how we're going to monitor it. And then if it's not working, do it differently.
So do you think that, obviously we all talk about content now a lot more. How important do you think then is the creative process around content now? Is there a need to be, always looking to be different, always looking for an angle that stands out from the crowd, or becomes the purple cow, as Seth Godin puts it, which is, something that's just so different, it stands out from the crowd, rather than the same vanilla colored stuff that everybody puts out? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess so. But then it needs to be authentic as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So yes, you've got your business, you've got your brand, but then as individuals, we need to be authentic as well. And I've seen people running courses on how to be authentic on social media, and surely the answer is just to be yourself.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure, and then, we see other people being successful. I've spoken about this on my own podcast episodes and
Yeah.
social media, because
Yeah. Yeah.
we're all putting on social media what we want people to see. We're not putting on social media what we don't want people to see, to start off with. People are being more open as individuals about personal stuff now than ever before, but nevertheless, people are putting stuff on social media what they want us to see. And we're encouraging people to do some competitor analysis as part of their strategy. And so you need to see what they're doing, but not pay attention to the point where it actually makes you or your product or your brand feel inferior because you're not doing X, Y, and Z and they are. Understanding the competition is not about doing the same thing. It's about finding what makes you different. So it's that balance, isn't it, between emulating people that are successful in your field, but finding your own lane and sticking to it and being yourself. We're all individual. We don't have to be anything other than us, do we?
That's right. And, and it's as I said at the start, really, it's a lot easier to say than it is to do. And I point out to many people, if there was a book which was the absolute guaranteed success of marketing, everybody would have the same book.
Yeah.
But then what I always also find as well, Tracy, is a lot of people, and it links to what you were saying a few minutes ago, that people very often are looking for magic pixie dust. They're not looking for strategy. They're not looking for tactics that, over a period of time. Well, actually, that's a good point, actually. Do you find that people do get a bit mixed up, the difference between sales and marketing, and the difference between the instant gratification of the sale versus the long tail of the brand development? Is that something you see as well?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I did an entire episode on this as well, because we say it together, don't we? And we say sales and marketing. If you ask anybody about it, it comes in that order, sales and marketing.
Yeah, it does.
When actually the marketing has to come first, the strategy has to come first, the marketing communications and the delivery of the promotions has to come first, and then the sales. But without the sales, there's no marketing budget. So we work it around like this, but people say sales and marketing like they go together, and they're two completely different things.
Yeah.
Marketing's not about selling what you've got, is it? It's about giving your customers what they need in the
absolutely.
right way.
And understanding the whole difference between sales and brand development, which is a time-consuming thing, and can't be measured in the same way to the same finite detail.
No.
I've had a question here actually from Natalie. Thank you, Natalie, for tuning in. And Natalie says, I can't help but wonder whether social media still works. What do you guys think? I suppose she's just thinking about all the different people hammering out stuff and then not seeing their sales go berserk because they put out 3 posts a month. I don't know.
Or there is an increase in sales, but if they're not getting the engagement, they don't see that it's working. So I was having this conversation with somebody just yesterday.
Mm.
So we measure by interaction, by engagement, by the likes, by the shares, and this is where comparing to others, sometimes you think, well, why are they getting this? Why not? And first of all, you've got
I
to
know.
understand the platform that you're on. You've got to understand the algorithms, how it works. And so you can't necessarily put the same stuff out in the same way. You can still have the same marketing messages, but you've got to understand that platform. But the other thing is, just because people are not interacting and engaging doesn't mean they're not seeing it. So coming back to what you were saying, you've got your direct response marketing and you've got your brand marketing, and your social media is always going to be a combination of both. So, for example, we did an exhibition. In fact, this happens a lot when we're doing expos, and people come up,
Yeah.
oh, I've seen you doing this, and I've seen you doing the other, and oh, I love that, whatever it was, that was like, and you think, well, did you? Because there was no interaction, there was no comments, so it doesn't mean they're not seeing it. So I think
Well,
you
that's true.
find that balance of adding
Yeah,
value through your posts as well.
yeah, that's very true. And all the data suggests that the number of people liking things now has plummeted compared with a few years ago. And I know myself, I don't know about you, but I know myself, I'll read something, I'll see something, but I don't like anywhere near as much as I used to. That's because I'm a miserable git these days. I don't know.
And sometimes we don't want people to know that we're on the platform, because then you might
Yeah.
start getting messages and actually you just want to dip in and dip out.
Yeah.
That patience
Yeah.
thing comes into it. How much time are we spending on social media? And coming back to the authentic thing as well, like for me personally, I can't be false. So if something's not quite right, or I've got something on that needs my attention, I won't pretend that everything's wonderful if it's not. It's just not, it's not in my nature. So I might be a little bit quieter perhaps if I'm really busy working on a project, or I might just pull back a little bit and then re-engage.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but then it's all about that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, and it can even come down to moods. I mean, we're all kind of
Yeah.
have different things going on in our lives, and there might be certain times where we're a lot more upbeat and a lot more active, and other times where we're not. We're just miserable.
Yeah, and you perhaps don't want to share that, or you don't
Yeah,
want it to come across
yeah,
through your post. And now, not only have we got branding, we've got personal branding as well, haven't we? Which
yeah.
wasn't a thing
Well, it wasn't, was
before.
it?
No, but it is
It
now, and
wasn't,
it
was
does
it?
matter.
It does matter. Absolutely. And it's something I say a lot to people, is that despite the digital age, people still buy people. And you see it all over the place, where people will buy into people as opposed to the actual product or the service. So it is very, very important to put the time into that personal brand. And I suppose that's been accentuated a lot, hasn't it, as well, by the likes of Instagram, and apps like that, which are very visual stimulations.
Yeah, and also it's who you're hanging around with. So, who you would spend your time with in person, why should that be different online? Because
Yeah.
I was a keynote speaker at the Digital Women UK event in Birmingham. And one of the things that sticks out in my mind was somebody that was in the audience that had said that she wasn't really liking the stuff that she was seeing in her feeds, and she was actually finding it quite draining. And I said, well, there is a thing, say, on LinkedIn, where the more people you're connected to, you can connect to third degree and second degree contacts, or whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But would you hang around with those people in real life? Would you have conversations with them that were draining? No. We'll remove them then. And then, because what you keep coming on and what you interact with, the algorithms think that's what you want to see, and they show you more of it. So you've got to be
Yeah.
careful about what you are commenting on, and what
Yeah.
you're not, and liking, and all the rest of it, because essentially you want to train those algorithms to know the type of people that you want to hang out with on social media and be connected to.
Well, talking of that, it's very, very appropriate you should say that, because I think it takes us very nicely into the world of networking, which is another absolutely amazing amazing thing. What do you think then are the most important things about networking now in the modern age versus maybe in the past?
I think it's changed a lot. I think, the pandemic has taught us that as human beings, we need to be around other human beings. I think it's
Mm,
important to have that face to face connection, even if you're someone that likes to do online networking. I think there should be a balance of both. I think there's a time and place for some individuals if that's what they want to do, but that human connection that we need. But then there's also that follow up now. Social media gives us the opportunity to keep in contact, to build relationships online. Almost, I guess, like online dating. You know, if you I've had situations where you meet somebody through LinkedIn and you're perhaps commenting a little bit, and then you might take it one step further and have direct messages, and then take it one step further and then you speak and you follow up and then you take it off the platform and you form real relationships. But whether it's online or not, the digital platforms make it easier for us to connect to people now and keep in touch with people and then build a relationship. Even if it's someone you've just had a 5-minute conversation with, people don't think twice about adding you on LinkedIn, do they? So I
yeah,
guess and then it's interacting and following up,
yeah,
comment on.
yeah. It is, and again, it's a complicated area, but certainly I think when it comes to small talk, there's a significant number of people who hate the idea of small talk. And of course, small talk is really just a key part of the process. When you're actually networking face to face, you will normally have some kind of small talk to develop a bit of a relationship and find a way forward. And a lot of people would rather eat the shoes than do small talk at a networking event. I
But
don't know if
but
you've
we
found
should.
people saying that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, but we should treat social media the same. I
Mm,
hate it when I
yeah.
connect with somebody and they send me a message that's in my face selling me. That's like
Do you want
coming
to
up to me at
buy?
a
Yeah. Do you
networking
want to
event,
buy this? Ridiculous. Yeah.
slapping a flyer in my face and going, "This is
Yeah.
what I do." They wouldn't
Yeah.
behave like that in that environment.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
shouldn't be that detachment there
Yeah.
on LinkedIn either.
Do you think
That
it's as
drives me
possible?
mad.
Sorry, do you think it's as popular today, networking, as it's ever been? Or do you think that because of maybe anxieties of walking in rooms and uncertainties about strangers and all that stuff, do you think it's as popular now as it's ever been? Just your honest opinion based on what you've
Yeah.
seen.
I think, yeah, and I train people in networking as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So, to enhance those skills so the communication
Mm,
is there, the
mm,
rapport building and stuff as well. But
mm.
yeah, I do think it is. And I've also seen an influx of people that used to be members of our Bob clubs coming back to it
Yeah.
because a lot of businesses are regrowing, as we all are after the pandemic. So they're going back and going, right, okay, well, what worked when we first got started? Let's go back and do that. There's also an element of business owners recognizing that actually there's other benefits to networking. It's not just about getting referrals. That's not why they're there now. They're there to get referrals for suppliers, but they're there for the human interaction. They're there to build the relationship. So a lot of people are realizing the importance of that, as well, especially if it's people that are new to business and there may be sole traders that are by themselves when they've used to be in an environment, maybe in corporate or something where there's people around them all the time. And I think the businesses that have focused on building relationships still over the last few years are really seeing the benefit of that now. So I'm seeing closer bonds than ever before.
So do you also, when you do that training or coaching, etc., do you tend to spend time on explaining how people need to understand that they're not there to sell and not to go in with the hello, my name's Phil, hello, my name's Tracy, this is what I do, and then 45 seconds without a breath, or even 3 minutes without a breath, just saying this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do, like a flamethrower. Is that something that you talk to them about?
Yeah, and also that, that you don't judge somebody by what they do or what the size of business is because you just never know who they know. The training I do, I kind of split it into 3 areas. So first of all, it's about the rapport and communications, and that benefits all aspects of the business, but I'm linking it directly to networking. But the feedback that I get is it helps in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
And then actually having a networking strategy. Apart from my marketing mentoring clients or my marketing clients, nobody seems to have a networking strategy. And I often hear people say marketing and networking like they're two different things. But your networking is part of your marketing mix. It's part of a way to reach your target audience. So why not have a strategy for
Do
that?
you know, that is so true.
It
I've
is
never really
true.
thought of it in those terms, but I'm thinking about some of my clients and the conversations I've had with them. And you're right. No, I'm not even, in fact, I don't really have a networking strategy. I probably have one floating around in my mind somewhere, but I probably don't formalize it in the same way that I would other marketing activity. I always get takeaways from these things every time. And that's one of the takeaways straight off. I thought, yes, that makes a lot of sense. I need to have a look at that and see if I can. I've got a question here actually, which is from a guy called. I'm terrible at pronouncing some names. Camera. I think it's Camera. I think it is. It's with a K. It's not Cameron. It's Camera with a K. And Camera's just saying, should I follow up with everybody that I meet, or just the people that I think are useful to my business?
Oh, that's interesting, because how do you know that they're useful to your business that you don't?
Yeah.
I'm going to share a story. Well, I hope we've got time for a little story.
Go.
This was when I very first started networking, which was in 2003. I first started, and when I started my networking business, I was having to educate people what networking was. I didn't know what it was. It was a new concept. But I went to an open networking event. And I've shared this story probably thousands of times because it sticks in my mind so much. So I went to this event and there was a gentleman there who we'll call Mr. X. So Mr. X was talking to another gentleman.
You, Tracy, you bottled
I would
it.
never ever share his name or what he does. I'll call him Mr. X. I call him Mr. X or Mr. Ignorant, one of the two.
Yeah.
So he was having a brief conversation with somebody and he was really quite rude. And I'm sure that camera wouldn't do this, but you'll get my point. So he's having a chat with this guy, very, very brief. And he actually flat out said to him, "Yeah, I don't think you're going to be any use to me in my business," and moved on quite sharply. So what he was at this open event and he was just there to try and have as many conversations as he could. And so he left and he went on his way. Mr. Y, I then stepped in because I overheard what he said. I stepped in and continued a conversation with him. And I said, I can't believe that just happened, but da-da-da-da. Anyway, Mr. X, the reason why he thought that he wasn't a good contact for him is because he wanted connections into the oil industry. So his clients were clients like Shell, BP, that kind of thing. And this Mr. Y had a really small consultancy business, didn't have that many clients, small selection of clients. So, I mean, most people some people might have thought that in their heads, but not said it, but he flat out said no use to me and moved on. So I was chatting to Mr. Y and I was asking him about his business and things like that. And we got talking and lo and behold, his brother was one of the bigwigs at BP. So how do you know?
Exactly.
You don't know who people know.
Yeah.
So Mr. X went on his merry way and still to this day probably doesn't know what he could have had because you don't know what you could have won.
Here's what you could have won.
You don't know. Yeah. I felt like wielding in the caravan off Bullseye from years ago. Here's the caravan that you could have won.
You know what I mean when I say that, but yeah, you clearly do.
Yeah, I do. and so that always sticks in my mind. So you don't know if somebody's going to be a good contact or not until you build the relationship with them because you don't know who they know. So my answer, yes, I would never judge anyone by what they do, how they talk, how they dress, what their business is. Just be non-judgmental.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't be a Mr. X because you could miss out on your Mr. Y.
one of the interesting things, what I've always found is that if you show a genuine interest in people and you ask them questions about them, their lives, their work, etc., this is a very general rule, but they tend to like you, the very fact that you're showing an interest in them. And I think that's more so now than it's ever been, actually. I don't know
Yeah.
what you think about that.
I think generally people like people who are like them. And
Yeah.
if you're asking questions, then you're in control of the conversation.
Mm.
So you could be asking questions and say very little, and the other person perceives you as a really good conversationalist. So yes, if you're asking the questions, you're in control of that. You're finding out more about that person. You're showing a genuine interest. And yeah, and we go through all that on my training as well. It's really interesting because what ends up happening is when I'm training people, they get a really good understanding of other people's different styles of communication and how they can adapt and how they've been in situations when they're networking and they perhaps feel like somebody's not listening to them, or they feel a bit excluded from something and therefore they back off. And they could be missing out on, and the person they're talking to. But sometimes, because of different communication styles, there might be almost like a subconscious clash where people back off. And so, what I'm teaching them to do is understand how and why and how to overcome that, so that they can communicate and build rapport with anybody, and not miss out on opportunities. But listen to listen, not listen to reply, makes all the difference.
Yeah. I've
Two
got
ears and one mouth.
true, very true. Which we have to remind ourselves as Northerners all the time, if
We
we're really,
do.
really
Yeah.
honest about
And especially for us extroverts, it's something that you have to
Yeah.
master over time. I always say that sometimes introverted people back off from networking because they don't feel comfortable in an environment. And in my opinion, introverts make the best networkers because they
Yeah.
naturally ask those questions because they don't want to be front and center. So they will talk and show a genuine interest, and they will genuinely listen rather than whereas when we're quite extrovert, we want to get in there, don't we? And so we have
Exactly.
to learn over time to manage that, I think.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I couldn't agree more. I've got a comment more here from Julia, and Julia says, "I absolutely love networking, but I hate online networking. Is it worth me keep doing it?"
Why, if you hate it? No. Why
I
if
know.
you hate it, it's not giving you something, and it's probably that connection. And what's the lady's name? Sorry.
Julia, she's called. It's just
Julia.
Julia. Yeah.
Yeah, Julia. So if you're not hating it and you're missing that, it might be that you've got quite a lot of kinesthetic communication within you, and therefore you're not getting that connection. And sometimes from here to here, it's difficult to read body language and stuff. And if you need that connection, then get face-to-face networking.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
if you hate it.
One of the things I noticed with online networking, which I've enjoyed and got a lot out of, is where the online networking allow you to organize for you to go into small rooms,
Mhm,
virtual rooms off the main room, and you get 5 minutes or so to chat with somebody one-to-one,
mhm.
identify whether there's anything that you can do for each other. And I think one of the other things as well is to think about collaboration opportunities, not always to be thinking about money and
Yeah,
buying, but how can you collaborate? And that's particularly true, of course, out of podcasting, video podcasting, live streaming, all that. You can collaborate, maybe interview each other, do something online like this, like we're doing now.
yeah.
And they're a great way to start to establish rapport and start to establish rapport with people. That's what I found anyway. If that helps, Julia.
I think do that anyway with face-to-face. Like we
Mm,
encourage all our members to have one-to-one meetings away from
yeah.
the face-to-face meetings because you get to know each other more. I think the difference between online and face-to-face is we tend to get straight to the point, don't we, when we're online? There's no small talk there and things. And I think when you face to face, you naturally talk about personal things as well as business, and sometimes that's what gives you the greatest connection. Sometimes it's personal things where the commonalities lie, or where the connections and contacts where you can introduce us to lie. But when we're online, I don't know about you, but I tend to find that we just get straight to the point and go right and straight into the meeting. And in some ways that's good because it's brilliant for managing time. But when you're face to face, I think sometimes that connection's stronger. But I would encourage people to have one-to-one meetings anyway, whether they're meeting face to face or online.
Yeah, I mean, the word you used earlier was rapport, and that's the
Yeah.
most important thing of all, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know what? That 35 minutes has just flown by. I've just looked at the clock and I can't believe it's gone. It's now 35 minutes. And I know we've only just covered the very, 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 very basics of the topics of marketing and networking. So, Tracy, tell everybody how they can get hold of you. How can they find out more about you? Website addresses, email addresses, pigeon, where they send their homing pigeon to, the whole thing.
I'm really easy to find. If you Google Tracy Heatley, you'll find me, I promise you anyway. But my website is tracyheatley.com, and it's TracyHeatley.com. On social media, I'm usually Tracy Heatley UK. If you put me on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, then connect and just drop me a message to say, why and where. My podcast is called Be Better with Tracy Heatley. That's just full of tips and advice, and there's loads of free resources on my website, blogs and such as well. So yeah, that's the best place to find me.
So we'll finish off with one top tip, which we've identified today, Tracy, which is if you connect with us on LinkedIn, we'd welcome you, but please don't message us 2 seconds after we've connected with a, hi, we're the best accountants that the world has ever known.
Yeah.
Would you like to have a 25-minute No.
No. Ditch those standard messages that go out to everyone.
They are just so bad. And everybody always, whenever I do these interviews, when it comes up, everybody bristles at the thought of it. So I think most people feel the same way.
Yeah. Can I just add something as well, actually,
Please
Phil?
do. Please
on
do.
LinkedIn, if you're in creator mode on LinkedIn, it will say on my profile, follow me. That's not me saying don't connect, follow me. I've got no choice. It's on creator mode. So whether you're on a phone or that, if you go to the full profile, if you go to the 3 dots and connect, do it that way, and then just drop me a message and say this is where you've heard us, and I'll happily connect.
That's a great point, that, because that just changed, didn't it? All of a sudden.
Yeah,
And
it's
I've
really
noticed that.
frustrating.
Yeah. So it's the follow me version. Even I didn't know that. I didn't know
Yeah.
it was, I just suddenly saw these things saying follow me, and sometimes it would say connect. And I didn't really know what the difference was. So that's a second takeaway I've got from talking with you today, which is absolutely awesome. I'm going to check that out as soon as we're done.
Okay.
So, Tracy, thanks very much for joining me today. It's been well worth the wait. Persistence it proves to be good in the end. It's lovely to see. I'm sure on our travels around the Northwest, we'll bump into each other and put the world to rights in the real world, as opposed to in the virtual world.
I'm sure we will. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Tracy. And thanks very much for joining us today. If you're watching this on catch up, then fine, that's great. You can connect with us or contact us if you like. If you watched it live, thanks very much for joining us today. It's appreciated because we all know just how time poor we all are. And that's why I'm just always so grateful for anybody that gives us their attention just for a short period of time. So thanks again, Tracy. Thanks for joining us today. And we'll see you again on the Journey podcast live very, very soon. Bye for now. Say bye-bye, Tracy. Wave.
Bye.
Bye.